Bench Opinions. Three idiots with amateur analysis.
All right.
Do you want to say hello again?
Hello. I just
Hi.
did it. I didn't the whole intro completely wrong. So you're now seeing the better intro. This is the third episode of the week.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've had two before this. If you're into football and rugby, you can check those out. And
Very insightful stuff.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Having lived through them, I'm quite impressed with what I lived through. And tomorrow we talk about life and all the good things. So you can check that out tomorrow for non-sport related stuff to kick off the weekend.
Yeah.
This is the crumbs at the bottom of the jar in the sporting world.
Probably doesn't do the sports that we talk about any justice.
No, but it is, but you still get, like when you think something's finished and yet there's still something left. I think that's what it is,
Yeah. It's like leaving your favorite piece of sushi till the last piece.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I tend to do on a plate when I eat it as well. Like I eat all the stuff that I kind of want to get through first, then the good stuff that's kind of where I feel like we're at.
Do you know what Klaus was mentioning the other day to me and he was shocked by is people having salad plates. He says he never had salad plates at home, but then you see the way he mounts his food when he's at your place for a braai, and then you'd probably think he should.
The old adage, it all ends up in the same place anyway. Eh? I've never heard you say that. I'm going to save you there. But
you've got to stack your plate like a plate of nachos.
It's the unbeknownst to the people that don't know the way you operate. I think that's probably what they would think.
But in South Africa, did you have a salad plate or did you just put salad on the slide?
I was fat, bro. I didn't eat salad, so that was irrelevant. If there was a salad plate, it was definitely not used.
What if the salad was like a mayonnaise egg salad?
No, it's salad. If it's salad, it ain't happening. Anyway,
have you seen those like 7-tier American salads that they make when it's like 7 tiers of different stuff and half of them is mayonnaise?
Yeah. Or it's also like Caesar salad is like the world's. It's just
I love that thing.
It's good,
Yes.
but it's like pasta salad. Anyway, we digress. We're talking about doing the sports that no justice. We're not even talking about them. Anyway, let's start with the ICC Champions Trophy, finished on Sunday. India coming out on top relatively easily, winning by 4 wickets in the end.
Yeah.
And just an unbelievably dominant display throughout the whole tournament. That must be said. Good effort by New Zealand, I think, but just too much firepower.
Yes, your heart breaks for them, eh? They've come so close on so many occasions,
and you just can't help but think that they just constantly like punching above their weight in global cricket. Tiny country.
Yeah.
I don't think the domestic league is anything to write home about, and yet in all formats,
so many good players that they produce. It's unbelievable.
And they have some proper, what do you call them, like journeymen almost, like Bracewell and these guys that you kind of, and I said it to you, I think, privately on WhatsApp. I was like, who are these people and why are they so good?
Yeah.
Particularly during the game against South Africa. But I think outside of the result, which I don't think a lot of people are too surprised by, is the big debate around India and them playing in Dubai. Safety reasons aside, I think elephant in the room is that they definitely benefit from it.
It's an advantage.
Yeah.
It's not to say that without that advantage they wouldn't have won, but they traveled 0 kilometers, and I think New Zealand traveled the furthest. I think they traveled 7,500 out of all the nations that were there. Yeah. And it's definitely a difference if you finish a match and you have to go to an airport, fly to a new hotel, train at a new training pitch, be in a new environment. So it's an advantage.
And I think it's also compounded by the bigger sort of feeling in cricket that India is just in every aspect just completely dominates the global game.
Yeah.
Which is unavoidable to a certain degree. Because I think there's just undeniable that Indians are the most passionate cricket fans in the world.
Yeah.
And I think their consumer behavior regarding this is bigger than anywhere else. And then there's also over 1 billion Indians. Yeah. So I think just all of those sort of massive sort of economies of scale that kind of get created it's unavoidable.
And it's not their fault that this happened. The ICC gave the Champions Trophy to a country like Pakistan, knowing that in all likelihood, India couldn't play a tournament there out of safety concerns. So you sort of ask yourself the question, is giving it to Pakistan the right
move? Yeah.
The right move?
Yeah.
Of course, you're happy for Pakistan to host live cricket again. But then also the Champions Trophy is not set up in a way that's viewer friendly. The games are during the week when people have to work. Half of the stadiums were empty the whole time. I know you guys spoke about it a little bit the last time. And if a tournament were to be played in South Africa and Afghanistan were to play Pakistan, the stadium also might not be full, but at least give it a chance, put it on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the games, and give people a chance to see live cricket.
Doesn't India have one of the biggest cricketing bodies that is part of the ICC?
Well, the ICC is independent.
No,
but
no.
The BCCI is the biggest federation.
Yeah.
And don't they have an influence over the ICC?
There is
Because they say it's independent, but I've read lots of reports where they actually say it's not that independent.
So the ICC's voting powers is heavily lopsided to the three teams that kind of have now
Bring the most revenue.
Yeah.
And
England,
Australia, and
run the game to a certain degree, which is England, Australia, and India. Yeah.
But then if India is so heavily involved in the voting power, then why did they veto that?
No, they're not in. I don't think their involvement stretches like that to that extent. Their involvement stretches more about the BCCI and the ECB and Australia. They can control the scheduling and their calendars to such an extent that the game just sort of gets focused on them. But the ICC will still determine where tournaments take place, and those are two different kettle of fish.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But yeah, the problem is is that players are talking about it. And I think that's the issue. The issue is whether it's their fault or not, or whether it's just, it seems too blatant to ignore.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. Yeah.
It leads to a question I think that can cover in a lot of sports is, FIFA do the same where they bring World Cups to countries and say, we're expanding the game and we need to bring football to this part of the world. But that often comes with so many problems in the fact that these countries maybe aren't ready to host World Cups. It's quite a financial burden on them. But is it right to host World Cups only in countries that can afford it, that are established, or is that hogging the game for the rich and the elite?
I mean, if you consider the fact that lots of these tournaments aren't always that financially beneficial to the countries that are hosting them in the first place, I don't know if they're really losing out then.
Well, I mean, a main part of that is the funds that a FIFA will demand from a country to host it.
Yeah.
I think if a country were just to host the World Cup and it were just to sort of get its stadiums ready or get its infrastructure ready, that's something else. But the actual money that an organization like FIFA charges for you to host a World Cup is something different. And the IOC is the same for the Olympics.
Not just in that, but also in their requirements for stadiums, and that they have to do a certain amount of infrastructure in a certain way that doesn't necessarily benefit the country, but just goes along the guidelines of FIFA.
I think I would argue Pakistan hosting the ICC Champions Trophy is one of the few occasions where it probably is a large benefit to kickstarting a sport again after a long time, and then proving to all these countries that they can host them as well. And then also the stadiums, albeit late and under sort of a little bit of scrutiny as to how the stadiums were finished and how quickly they were finished. But all of Pakistan's major stadiums have now been refreshed. Yeah. And that will kickstart cricket in the country after a long time in Exodus. So that's I think is a good thing.
I know we don't want to spend too much time talking about cricket, but I know you guys spoke about it briefly last week, but I think the ICC definitely needs to rethink how it presents these 50-over tournaments, because the 50-over game is sort of caught in a weird trance between people only discussing whether Test cricket and T20 have its relevancy. T20s are here to stay. They're the most entertaining format of the game, and it's growing worldwide like wildfire.
Commercially viable.
easy to sell. Test cricket, you'll always have your backers because people love Test cricket, and it's sort of like almost like those two are sort of set, and 50-over games are now sort of drifting a little bit into the wilderness, with very few 50-over series actually still being played, because obviously people want to concentrate on the formats that bring the most money. For something like the Champions Trophy to be set out the way it was, like I just mentioned, the fact that those games don't happen on a weekend and the thing isn't sort of built up a little bit more with a bit more fanfare seemed like such a waste to me. Like it's just a sort of very little effort was put into it by the ICC.
I agree with you on everything. I think hosting a 50-over tournament is always going to be difficult. I think that's the issue. What I do think that they could take away from something that you said is when you do series, try and it's obviously expensive because a lot of the teams have different squads for ODIs, tests, and T20s. But maybe one should think about, instead of us going, okay, we're going to do the 3 20s in a row, T20s in a row, then we're going to do the 3 ODIs in a row, and then we're going to do the 4 tests in a row. Yeah. At least the shorter formats where the squads are a little bit closer, play the T20s during the week where they start at 7 o'clock. Or 5 o'clock, so people can get there after work, and then play the 50 over games on the weekend. And I think those are kind of the smarter things. And there's a whole bunch of nonsensical things that happen. Why are series in countries only 2 matches or 4 matches?
Like a two match test series. It makes no sense.
Exactly. To me. And I think those are some of the things they're going to have to try and figure out, because otherwise cricket is just going to become T20.
Because I think the 50 over game is Klaus and I were talking about it, how we grew up with the 50 over game, and it's a different strategy, and it takes something else to win. The T20 is sort of a very specialized thing, and so is Test match cricket. And 50 over games are like an in between of like a quick fire shootout and an exceptionally long chess match, but it involves a lot more strategy, and a team isn't necessarily out of it really quickly. So I think there's a space for it.
Yeah, but that's all on cricket, and let's see. We're going into quite an exciting summer of cricket, so let's see how that gets along. Obviously, with the World Test Championships finals that we'll be at, which is exciting, and then Ashes is around the corner, and let's see how that all progresses. But we'll move away from cricket for a second and to golf. And quick, I'm not going to go too long. Jobuirg Open on the European Tour was hosted, or the DP World Tour was hosted.
Cracker.
Yeah, in our hometown on a golf course we've all played before. No, you have not yet played it before. Not yet, no. Yeah, but
I was a member at that. That was the first course I was ever a member at.
There you go, Houghton Golf Club.
Still looked very different at that point.
They then renovated it and redid the whole course. Again, the friend of the podcast, Jacques Kreiswijk, getting really close, losing out in the playoff in the end.
What a great finale.
Yeah.
I think he started 4 shots back.
Yeah.
Starting the day.
And he ended up shooting 66, a par 70 for the week.
And the guy who ended up winning shot an 8 under.
Yeah, 62
to get into a playoff, and it was a 3-man playoff. Even for Norris to get into that playoff was quite cool, because he struggled. On the Sunday.
Well, yeah, he birdied 16 and 18 to get into the playoff. Get into the playoff. A long putt on 18 to get into the playoff.
And three playoff? No. 2 playoff holes.
Yeah. 2 playoff holes. Very exciting as well, with the lightning rolling in. You didn't know if they would have enough time for a playoff.
Which I do think, I caught Jacques talking to one of the officials before his last putt. I think he was slightly distracted by...
Well, I mean, while he was putting, you could hear the thunder rolling around him.
So I think there was a weird element of kind of maybe a bit rushed and
but I mean, the nice thing is that it all 3 of them are affected the same way. By something like
of course, no. In that sense, no excuse. But I think it's interesting how those elements all come together to play a role. But Callum Hill with his 2nd win on tour, and also to make 62 on the final day and win is just unbelievable.
Very cool.
The DP World Tour goes into the Asian swing now. Couple weeks time they're in Singapore, and then they head to India and China. But a couple majors sort of sprinkled in between. And speaking of majors, the 5th major is coming up this week. The Players Championship.
Yeah.
Quick lowdown for everyone. It's the 52nd edition of the Players Championship. Since 1982, it's been hosted at the TPC Sawgrass, a very famous golf course with a lot of amazing features, but one of the main is the 17th hole being an island green. Very short little hole. They fish about 100,000 golf balls out there every year.
You see a lot of amateurs on YouTube, YouTubers taking on that thing, and it looks treacherous.
Only 134 yards off the standard club tees, so really not long.
Do you know about how wide it is by chance?
No.
It doesn't look very wide.
No, I think it's real finesse, and I think about 75 balls on average a year by the pros end up in the water throughout the tournament, which is a lot as well.
Yeah.
So the margin for error is really small. But it's called the 5th major, and if you look at the field, it is a major field.
Yeah.
Top 50 players in the world getting invited, and then a couple of invitees from across the world, former champions also getting exemptions for 10 years. So yeah, very interesting to see how this plays out. Favorites, the usuals, Scotty Scheffler. Scotty Scheffler, if he wins, it's his 3rd Players Championship, and the only other player to have ever done that is Jack Nicklaus. So that's an interesting permutation. Rory McIlroy having a good week at Bay Hill as well. He's in the mix. And then Colin Morikawa was up there. He had a good week as well.
The world top 3 are actually paired together, I think, with Xander Schauffele, Rory McIlroy, and Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah, so interesting to see what happens. And I'll be watching, I think, as much as I can, because I just also love the look of the course, and they call it the stadium course, so it's a perfect tournament golf course with the way it finishes and the ebbs and flows and the risk and reward involved. So that's going to be really interesting to watch. I have a couple of questions, though, to you guys about how the golfing schedule has kind of worked out and how it's changed over the years. Players' Championship is this week, and the first weekend of April, is the Masters.
Yeah.
Which means very, very close together, and not very far behind that is the US Open.
Yeah.
In the past, there was way more space between them, and now my question is, I think it's a bit sad that it all comes so thick and fast.
Well, then there's the Open in July.
It's in July.
Yeah. It's strange, because then after that the major series is done.
Yeah.
And then you have sort of half a year of the PGA Tour sort of fizzling out. FedEx Cup,
yeah.
But it's I'm not so clued up around the golf schedule and what you could do differently, but I always find it striking that major season comes and goes like in a heartbeat.
Which
like
never
it feels
used
like
to be the case, because you used to have the PGA Tour before that. It's all happened because of the FedEx Cup, and the focus on the FedEx Cup, and with the amount of money that FedEx put into it, and that whole sort of tour championship thing towards the end of the season, and the winner winning $10 million, and it's this whole kind of, and allowing for the 3 tournaments to whittle down the field as you get closer to the tour championships. That's what's led to this, which has meant the PGA Championship that used to happen right at the end of the season is moved forward.
Yeah,
and you're playing. All 4 majors are being played within, I think, about a 3.5 months.
Yeah, that's sad. It's sad as a viewer, because it just happens so quickly, and you can't you get hyped for the one, and then you're sort of caught in the next one already. So it's a bit strange.
Why does the FedEx Cup not want to allow them to play some of those majors later on in the year?
I think it's just a scheduling question. Yeah, because you obviously want the FedEx Cup to happen at the end of the season, because you accumulate points as the season goes on. And I think, and then obviously coupled with the road to Dubai now being so big, which is the final, the FedEx Cup equivalent for the European and DP World Tour.
And every tournament will want to have its moment in the sun, and you don't want any distraction around you. But I guess it does take away from each. Well, the thing is, something like the Masters is the be all and end all. So I know in the past some people have chosen not to play some tournaments leading up to the Masters, or have decided, depends on what your strategy is. And I think the PGA Tour in general probably just needs to look at the whole product that they're putting up schedule wise, and decide whether the way that they're doing it now. I know they went through this a year or two ago with the elevated events thing, trying to get people to at least the major ones, their main players. But is the way that it's set up now really the way forward? Majors are essentially what keeps golf alive. Similarly, I guess, to tennis, not as extreme.
For sure, yeah. I think I read an interesting thing that people talking about with the prize money being what it is now at individual PGA Tour events, even the smaller non-elevated events. The guys are winning over $1 million for one event. And what's this leading to is that a lot of the guys are going, I don't need to play more than 15 events a year.
Yeah.
And what's happening is obviously then your pool of the stars, the guys that are winning more are choosing to play less.
Yeah.
So you kind of, the more they win, the less they want to play. But that means the more popular they become, the less they play.
But yeah, you do find that they've hamstrung themselves with the amount of PGA events played in a year. Is it necessary to have the John Deere and the Kazoo and the whatever classics they have? Or can you take 6 of those out, maybe make a league or something that is not for the top 50 in the world, but where you sort of divide the fields and you have really the best playing against each other once a month or something like that?
Yeah. True. I mean, there's also been talk about other elements to make, also like an all-star kind of thing that we've been sharing it back and forth to each other. That for me is something that makes it interesting. Getting the best players in the world, or even maybe not the best players, but the top 50 to some sort of skills competition or something. But you need time in the schedule to do something like that so that people actually have attention. Add to that the TGL now as well, which is another scheduling issue to a certain degree, because the guys always have to fly to Florida. That might change. but the guys, no, Atlanta. Where is it? SoFi?
I think it's Florida.
I think it's
Not
Florida.
sure.
They have to keep flying back to SoFi to do it. I think I predicted that eventually you'll probably see it follow the tour around because that makes more sense.
But that's also, you'd think that the TGL's birth is also born a little bit out of the PGA's Tour's inability to diversify its product. And it just sort of sticks to what it's got and doesn't change at all. And then people in the game or along the game will always be like, okay, well, there's opportunities to do things differently. So then you've got all these projects springing up alongside it, whether it be Live or the TGL, and the main product probably suffers because it's all super disjointed. And if you look at golf at a whole now, it's a mess because there's Oaks playing 4-day tournaments, there's Oaks playing 3-day tournaments, there's Oaks hitting balls into a screen, and you're not sure what professional golf is anymore. YouTube golf is taking over. Like, I mean, you get it in other sports as well with football. Sort of,
there's disruption.
There's disruption, and there's other formats taking off, and there should be space for other formats. But in those sports, like in football, for example, the people who are partaking in things like the Kings League or the Baller League aren't professionals that are playing in the Bundesliga or the Premier League. That's new. That's almost
a parallel
new.
universe.
It's a parallel universe. If the TGL had YouTube stars and just nobody is from a normal course with a bit of charisma, that would be easier to understand than what's happening now, which is just golfers doing like 7 different things during the week.
It's going to be interesting. One thing I do want to, outside of the scheduling and sort of the commercial or the logistical aspect of it, is interesting from a player's point of perspective, because if you listen over the years, players always said, they look to kind of time their preparation going into Masters. Into majors, and even the Masters, for example, and also the Open. The Open traditionally, a lot of the guys play the Scottish Open the week before the Open, and a lot of the PGA Tour players come across to get preparation on a link-style golf course. So very interesting to see how these guys, like there's this old sort of folklore. You don't want to win the players. Now with the new schedule, you don't want to win the players because you might be stealing your own thunder before the Masters comes along and all of that. What are your thoughts on that? Do you? I'm personally like, if you're going to play a tournament, you need to win it, and winning, it's always a positive.
Yeah, for sure.
Isn't it just going to become like the same way the Premier League and all those other leagues sort of happen parallel to one another? You start choosing like, okay, do you want to risk your player for this game? Yes, no. Do you send your second string team out? And in this case, they obviously don't have a substitute player. So they just say, I'm not going to play this tournament and I'd rather not win that trophy. Or if it's something like the FedEx Cup, maybe you've got enough points already so you don't have to compete in all the...
And I guess that's what separates the greats from the not greats. I think if Scotty Scheffler is just, he's got the game to go out and win the players, and a month later go and win the Masters. And I think that's what separates the greats from the rest. And you look at Rory, and he is one of the greats. He's won something like 27 times on the PGA Tour alone. But that major escapes him. So.
And if you look at the benchmark and you look at Tiger, I think it was it his 01 season or something where he won
everything,
almost everything, and he'd win on the PGA Tour, he'd win the nothing events, then he'd go into the major, he'd win the major. That's the benchmark.
Was the calendar as packed as it is now?
No, it's not the same, but it was similar. It's not like he was playing something completely different like Jack Nicklaus was. But just maybe a last spanner in the work on the scheduling, because you mentioned at the Scottish Open, I'd love it to be more like a Formula One type of thing in the world, where the biggest tour in the world would play all the main majors around the world. So the main Open. So play the South African Open, play the Australian Open, play the British, the Scottish Open, things like that, and play those historical Opens and get the best players down there. But I think that's so far from reality, because
let's see how I think it's all going to come down to this push through Live Golf and like this on an administrative level, this globalization of the game happening, and I think you might see that change. And it just depend. It's all going to depend on how they look to continue to commercialize the game, because there is a feeling sometimes on the DP World Tour as well that the smaller events really go completely unnoticed. I think it's beautiful for the guys that are DP World Tour members, because they still earn a pretty good living, and some of the fields, there's not anyone in the top 50 in the field.
And like, I'm sure for someone from that area to go watch professional golf is also cool.
Exactly.
Like, you shouldn't take that away. But maybe there's a different way to structure it, in the sense that up and coming players can still play those smaller Opens or smaller events, but there's a qualification phase for everyone around the world to get into that main tour to play the main events around the world, and majority of them can be in the USA because that's where golf is the biggest, and it should be. But there's some events in the US, even on the PGA Tour, where you're like, what the hell's going on here?
And also, if you just look at it, it's just got nothing to do with golf being it's an amateur man's game. These small events, the guys are often scoring 35 under par in 4 days. And that's just got nothing to do with the game of golf that the common man loves. So
or understands.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of question marks, and we covered it. We covered it last week, and I think that just shows you the fact that we're at this point again, questioning how the global game develops means that it's something that they're probably scratching their heads wondering how they can fix moving forward.
Playing golf a lot, I think if you're a golfer yourself, you do appreciate what these guys are able to do because unbelievable. I don't understand. One, the mental fortitude to get to the 16th hole and still have any level of concentration left because I can't get past 15. And
I think it helps if you haven't I can put back 12 beers, 15 beers the night before.
Yeah, that's true.
That being said, we were watching Jacques on the second playoff hole, and we saw where his first putt was coming from, and we're like, yes, our hearts were beating. And then we're like, we're not even standing on the green,
Yeah.
The lightning then rolling in, that adds another element of danger that you don't usually have in golf.
And there's tee shots. To be in a playoff under that much pressure. Sure, it's not a narrow fairway, but I think he hit his 2-iron the same on the last shot of his round, his first playoff hole, and the second one was a bit further right. But to make that sort of connection and to be that solid, and Hill was the same. He also was super super solid off the tee, but to have
Norris not so much.
No.
Norris
consistently near and in the bunker,
but. That alone, to hit those kind of shots under pressure is very impressive.
Especially with the shot shape that he's playing, because he's playing a little bit of a fade off the trees. So he's really got no room for error.
Yeah, very impressive. I could never do it.
Hey, man.
This is why we're sitting on the couch.
And yet we go out there every fucking week and we'll it's that one shot around where it's like,
if there was a market for teething your chip shots over the green.
Or chunking them.
I don't chunk them that much anymore. I sort of run them along the ground without ever getting them off the ground at a pace that could hurt someone, but I'd be a champion at that.
Yeah. But it is an amateur man's game, and I stick by that, and that's why I hope that they also they keep that element to it, and they actually keep embracing the guys that are the heroes amongst the amateurs, which are the guys that are on YouTube, including DeChambeau.
Little shout out to, what's that Australian who won the Puerto Rico Open?
Yeah,
but I'm saying shout out to him and I don't even know his name.
Yeah.
Shout out to that guy.
Shout out to that guy.
Very prominent YouTuber though.
Prominent, well.
Not very prominent, but
yeah. The headlines were prominent YouTubers. Then I went on his YouTube profile. The last one he posted was 8 months ago. But he's got 55,000 followers on Instagram. So he's more of the younger ilk of...
Yeah.
Has been on social media, sort of come through that, but very cool to see. And characters like that I think will also be good for the game, because I think Australians in general are good for the game because they've got a lot of life and personality, but good to see.
And if they don't have personality, they have a mullet like Cam Smith. So,
very true.
So there you go.
Oh, you mentioned the only one who doesn't have a personality, but
exactly. All right, well, that's I think it for the leftovers. Anything else?
That's it.
That's it.
Nothing happening in the world curling.
Well, I wanted to speak about the Kenyan Yixke Championship, but
you and the Yixke, you can't get over it.
I love Yixke. It's a good sport. South Africa's very good at it because they're the only ones that play it.
We'll be back next week with some results from the players. I think the first one you can really get excited about on the PGA Tour. So it will be good to see who comes away with it, because the favorites for this season haven't really gotten started.
No.
With Scheffler, McIlroy, Schauffele, Morikawa. None of them getting a win yet, so be good to see who takes it.
Tommy also in there?
Fleetwood?
He's there.
I think he's there, but he's not competing.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Another man with good hair.
Yeah.
Good teeth.
Right. That's it. Thanks a lot. Another episode coming out tomorrow that you can tune into, and then it's the weekend. And then we won't bother you anymore. Yeah. And then we'll see you again next weekend.
If you like this, please subscribe.
Cheers.
Bye.